What I did start to see is that I could rewire my brain, that I could be wired for happiness. For me, it just took a little bit more effort, maybe than the person next to me. So much of it comes down to habit. And so much of it comes down to how we view ourselves and how we fit into these roles that other people have put us in, that we wake up and just assume every morning unconsciously.
Welcome to FemMD, real talk for women who are balancing careers, ambition, and the chaos that comes with it all. Dannie De Novo is joining us today. I am so excited to talk with her. She is an elite happiness coach. So Dannie, tell us a little bit about what you do today and what happiness means to you.
Oh, well, I think those are both sort of loaded questions. I do a lot today, but what I do mainly is work on my own happiness, because I was someone who really, really suffered and tortured myself. Longstanding depression and anxiety, lots of cycles that needed to be broken. And I kind of see myself as a recovering addict in those regards. And so I spend a lot of time every day just kind of on myself, on my own mental health and what I need to do to be the best person to show up for my clients, myself, and my daughter every single day. But what I do for clients is I kind of help them see where they're maybe not being quite so honest with themselves as far as their happiness goes, right? Everybody wants happiness. A lot of people think it's either elusive or it's just one of those things that maybe doesn't quite show up as they expected it to, or maybe it's close, but it's not quite there. There's just some component of something missing. And I really find that comes down to being honest with yourself and being brave. You have to be brave enough to listen to that voice inside of you, which is really difficult to hear sometimes. But when you do hear it, you've got to be brave enough to listen to it. And then you've got to be brave enough to act in conformity with that voice, despite what the world says, what your friends say, what your spouse says, what your kids say, what your mom says, and really kind of break old patterns in doing so. And that's where the real gold lies. But it is a journey not for the faint of heart. It can be a tough haul to get there.
I think we all have dark cycles. I think some have darker and longer cycles than others. I think for myself, I think about, is the goal happiness or is the goal contentment? Contentment to me seems much more attainable, because you're right, happiness does seem elusive.
Yeah, I mean, and I, sometimes it's a matter of semantics, and sometimes it's just sort of the meaning that you attribute to it, right? I define happiness as a sustainable state wherein I feel grounded and connected. So happiness is not up here all the time. It really comes down to a sense of peace. And if I'm feeling generally good about my connection with the world and the people around me, and if I'm feeling grounded and centered, am I up and down? Am I able to come back to my equilibrium pretty easily? Where am I in all that? And kind of what does my daily thinking look like, right? Like where's my head most of the day? Am I staying present? Do I have an outlook of gratitude? Am I looking at things with a more positive spin? Or am I in that negative cycle, which is a very easy thing for me to get on and spiral down very quickly? I'm just not one of those people who was born being positive. I don't wake up in the morning like, yeah, another day, right? It's even to today, that doesn't happen for me.
For me, having children has given me such insight into my own demeanor, because I would say that I'm a little bit like you. I wake up a little bit of a prickly pear, whereas my husband just wakes up as like a happy mango every day.
Yeah.
And I can see that in my kids too. It's like one of my kids is much like me, where he just kind of generally wakes up a little bit pricklier. So what are some like practical things that work for you in the morning?
Maybe the most important thing is that when I wake up and I roll over, I have two things that are right on my dresser right across from my bed. It's a sign that says, when you feel like quitting, remember why you started. And right next to it is a picture of my daughter. And I really did start this happiness journey for her. I had been told so many times that I was not wired for happiness. It was not something that was going to happen for me, that it was just something that I was going to have to regulate. A lot of physicians and other mental health professionals had told me, you're never going to make it. People like you don't make it, and so I really truly believed that that it was not something that I could attain, but I really thought that if I learned things for her and implemented them in her life when she was a baby, that she could avoid all of the pain and suffering that I had gone through. And so I studied it. Like, I'm a lawyer, so I literally started studying like I was studying for the bar exam, making sure I had every possible answer to every question that came about. But when I did start to do these things, what I did start to see is that I could rewire my brain, that I could be wired for happiness. For me, it just took a little bit more effort, maybe, than the person next to me. And now I really feel like I'm one of the happiest people I know. I really feel badly for a lot of people out there, because there are simple things that you can do to change a lot of it, but so much of it comes down to habit. And so much of it comes down to how we view ourselves and how we fit into these roles that other people have put us in, that we wake up and just assume every morning unconsciously.
So let's talk more about your past. Walk us through the very beginning and how you kind of give us some context about some of the things that you've talked about.
From a kid's point of view, I started to notice something was kind of off probably around 8 or 9, and things just felt different all of a sudden. And I had expressed this to my parents and to some other people, and they were like, oh, well, you're kind of on the verge of, hormonal changes and stuff like that, and things are going to feel different and it'll get better or whatever. And I was like, okay, so I just have to suck it up, I guess, and deal with it. And so I just felt a little bit less like myself, is the best way that I could describe it at the time. And then probably around 12 or 13, I really started to notice. I was like, you know what? Something's not right. I think I'm sick, because I just didn't have the energy that I used to have. I didn't like to do the things that I had liked to do. And it wasn't like over a period of time. It was like all of a sudden I just like had zero interest in anything. I had grown up competing in horseback riding, and all of a sudden, like, I didn't want to ride my horse, and I loved my horses, and I was like, why don't I want to ride? And then by the time I hit 16, I was like really kind of at rock bottom. Really at the point where like it was difficult to get out of bed, to get to school, to put forth any effort. I had been a straight A student. All of a sudden, I just didn't even put forth any effort whatsoever. And I think that was finally the turning point where my parents were like, oh, okay, because, they had really wanted me to excel at school. So finally, the doctor was like, hey, you know what? There's this woman who comes into my office once a week. Like, why don't you just talk to her? So I sat down and started telling her how I felt and what was going on. And then she just kind of paused, and she looked at me and she's like, honey, I think you're depressed. So she got up and she made a phone call to another doctor. And the next thing I know, I'm on antidepressants at 16. And then I just had these horrible headaches, total brain fog, and just really started spiraling like really, really horribly into suicidal ideation. But I managed to graduate, and I got myself to my first year of college. And you know what? Lo and behold, I'm away from home. First taste of freedom. And so I started drinking on top of taking all of this medication. And I was drinking a lot. And because of the medication, I was blacking out a lot, really on a bad spiral there. But went home, and then that's pretty much when I tanked. And then I tried to go back for sophomore year, and I just plummeted. I mean, like, I couldn't have a conversation with another human being. I was just so far gone. And then January 1, I made the phone call again to my therapist. I got to know what else you've got, because none of this medication is working. And I'm telling you right now that if I leave here, that I'm going to succeed in killing myself. And they said, we've done everything we can. The only option that we have left is electroshock therapy. And then, the next morning they wheel me into this secret part of the mental institution, which was like a pretty creepy place in and of itself already. They had taped my head down at this point with these 2 giant metal probes in his hand. And everywhere around the room looked like Frankenstein's laboratory. Like it was all these weird dials and whirring going on. And I was just like, this can't be real. And then everything went black. And when I woke up, I just had this headache that, it felt like I had been hit in the head with a sledgehammer.
Listening to you talk about all of this, it's just, thank you for your vulnerability. I mean, the biggest thing that I hear is that you were like completely alone, like, going through your treatment, being diagnosed, obviously your parents were there, but like physically, but it was hard for them to understand. The healthcare team didn't explain a lot of things to you. So what were the working diagnoses, when you were getting ECT? And for those listening, ECT is still a thing.
Yeah.
It's a
scarily.
Yeah, it is scarily.
Yeah.
And thinking back to that very first treatment, I wish as a healthcare provider, someone would have just stopped, turn the lights on, made it less scary, hold your arm or your shoulder and say, maybe we didn't explain it to you yesterday or whenever you signed the paper. Like, let's walk through what's going to happen today. And if you want to do it today, you can. If we want to cancel it, we can. I mean, now as an adult and doing what you do now, like, what was wrong about that picture?
When it comes to healthcare, I think you need to be very, very careful about who you pick as a provider. And I'm sure you probably talk about this a lot, right? Because unfortunately, there are a lot of bad doctors. There are a lot of bad therapists. I can't tell you how many therapists that told me it was okay to be depressed, right? Well, that's not. Like, it's okay to have feelings and to process those. And it's okay to feel sad or angry or whatever, but it's not okay to sit in this perpetual state of just total despair and hopelessness, especially at the age of 16, right? When there was no trauma or anything like that in my life.
And your brain is still developing at this point. I mean,
yeah. And while I do believe that the drugs may be beneficial for some people in some circumstances, they were not a good fit for me. And honestly, the more that I study it and the more that I study myself, I see, because it's not really about a chemical imbalance in the brain. There were so many other things that factored into it for me. And a lot of it was sort of like this spiritual disconnect of just this feeling of not belonging, of not really feeling the meaning behind what I was doing every day, even at a young age. I just felt that very intensely. And no one around to, talk about those things because the people in my life weren't concerned about it.
Two things I want to ask you. How do you feel like being a female played into this, especially early on with people saying, oh, it's your hormones?
Right.
And then also, I want your opinion on like intelligence level and mental health disorders. Part of me thinks that sometimes the more intelligent individuals do suffer more severely from mental health issues.
That's the story I like to tell myself. Right. I was like, oh, if I wasn't so smart. And I've had other people say that to me, you're probably just really intelligent. And I'm like, really? Because I've done a lot of dumb stuff too. But I do think that I look at the world a little bit differently. So if you want to call that a form of intelligence, then yeah, I think the people that tend to break down, things and look at themselves the same way they look at the world probably have a harder time with the depression and anxiety kind of things, possibly the OCD. As far as being a woman, yeah, I mean, obviously, had I been a boy, would I have been as dismissed as easily? I don't know. Would it have been blamed on hormones because boys are going through puberty too? I don't know. I do believe that hormones can be a trigger for sure, but is part of being a woman and understanding what's happening. No one was like, hey, can we look at this from another angle? right? Like I literally been on every drug that was available at that time and nothing was helping. In fact, I was getting worse. And as a scientist, I think you would be like, okay, if this is not helping, in fact, it's making things worse, maybe we should be looking at other things, right? Because if you're a doctor, then at least you know that one system is dependent upon another system in the body. Maybe there's just something that we're not looking at. But to have me so drugged out and spaced out for how long, and then just shift totally into, okay, well, we can give you these, these electroshock therapy treatments, or you can just kill yourself. I mean, I was not given too many options. And it was coldly presented. So many people in my life, including my parents, who were like, you just always do things the hard way. If you would just go with the flow and do it like everyone else and stop questioning things, like life would be so much easier. And I was like, you know what, maybe there's something to this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go with the flow and not question anything and fake being happy. I sucked it up. I got an undergraduate degree, somehow got into law school, made it through law school, took the bar exam, passed on the first try. And then I was just living the life that I thought everyone wanted to live. Yeah. So that's it, fake it, right? Fake it in front of everyone, fake it to yourself, and live a miserable life, but smile on the outside. But now I actually get to smile for real. And all it took was, my daughter being born.
How old is your daughter now?
She's 10, but she saved my life, because I probably would have eventually succeeded in suicide somewhere along the line. I still didn't really see, I had a very low feeling of self-worth. I just really didn't see the point of me being here, what I contributed, what I did. I had her, and then I loved being a mom, but I threw everything into that. Then it was the only thing that I had. And she was on the floor of the kitchen one day, and she started mimicking me when she was like a year old. And I was like, yeah, just like mommy. And then as soon as I said that sentence, I almost fainted on top of her. I had to sit down on the floor. I grabbed her and I started bawling my eyes out, because I realized she was copying me. And it didn't matter what I said, right? It mattered what I did. And I was showing her how to live this miserable, lonely, uninspired, unfulfilled life. And she was just going to repeat the cycle. And the thought of her going through those electroshock therapy treatments, I was like, no, that is not going to happen. And so that's when I just started cracking books. And then I got in more into the nutritional side and the neuroscience side. And it just became trial and error. Like, what if this stuff really does work, right? So I have to try it on myself to see what works for her. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a second. This feels different. This feels good. Like, let's do more of this. And it was honestly completely for her. And then I kind of like put it in like chronological order and decided to write a book, and it became an international bestseller. And I was like, oh, I guess people kind of want this information too. So maybe I can find a way for all of this stuff, some of it kind of bad, to be a blessing in disguise, and find a way to help people with the parts of it that they're not seeing, or that the people around them can't see.
And the folks that you help, would you say that a lot of them have had the same experience with the healthcare world, and that you are kind of that different approach that you wish you had had when you were going through it?
Sometimes. I mean, I find it appalling how many people are on some sort of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. And
Why? Why is it appalling?
Because again, I just think the mental health profession is like, oh, well, just, it's so driven by the pharmaceutical industry. Like, here,
just give them a pill.
Yeah. Cause like, what am I going to do? I mean, and here's the thing too, like, because when it comes to like the therapist standpoint, right? The people that you go to when you're like, okay, well, I need to go talk to somebody, right? Like, you're sitting down across from another flawed human being who, I mean, we're all flawed, who and again, like I mean no disrespect, but you probably went to college for 4 years. Maybe you did some graduate work, right? Like you read the books and like you looked at a brain and okay, great. But like, did you ever sit down and really like hash out your own crap? Even for like a psychiatrist, right? Like I look at it this way, like if you've gone to medical school, then you've looked at a human heart and you've looked at the function of the human heart, right? Like you can understand where the blood comes in, how it perfuses, right? Like there's a mechanical, tangible aspect to that, right? And even if you've never had a heart attack, you understand the idea of pain, physical pain. You know what that feels like. But if you've never had depression, how are you going to treat it? Like there is no mechanical, like you can look at the neurons and their pathways, sure, but there's nothing to like help you understand what the thought process is, what that feels like, what the mental anguish and pain feels like. So how do you really get your arms around it to treat it? And so I think there's just a lot of people that are like, well, the research shows if you take this pill for 30 days, like you're going to be great. And that's like, great. So am I going to take this pill for the rest of my life then? And what happens when it doesn't work anymore? Yeah. I mean, I'm very skeptical anytime any health providers like take this pill, right?
And not to get tangential here, but like I think about that, like I would say like half of my patients, I'm a cosmetic surgeon, are on one of these weight loss injection drugs.
Yeah.
And I just have to think, like part of my brain is like, is this some Black Mirror episode where we're just like shooting ourselves with these exogenous compounds that we're tricking ourselves into eating less when really, what's the end goal? Are we supposed to be on this forever?
Yeah.
Perhaps we should dive a little bit deeper, think about big sustainable habit changes in our lives. I don't know. That's like definitely an outside. I definitely don't prescribe those drugs. I'm not up and up on all of the research, but when you look at it from like a bird's eye view, I think you could take the same approach to a lot of the antidepressant and anxiety medications.
Yeah, probably a lot of the medication that people are taking, right? And I'm not saying that it's simple for everyone either, right? Like I know people who literally stopped drinking soda, lost a ton of weight, like the A1C's in check, like all of a sudden it's like they're a completely different person from changing one habit,
one thing,
right?
Yeah.
One thing. And then like other people change 15 different variables and it doesn't shift the needle at all. At least we're at a time now where you can go out and get some, some information on your own and kind of find the people who are at the top of their game in respective, different areas of medicine or whatever, different specialty areas. So
let's shift to present day with your happiness coaching. Walk us through maybe like Jane Smith. What are you going to do? Because you've mentioned it's such an individualistic thing.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools that you use to help others?
Yeah, I would say I have kind of probably a different approach than some other coaches would, because I am going to lean on you quite a bit, right? Like it really is sort of a breaking down until you can build yourself back up kind of a process. And that, I mean, you kind of have to forget who you are to realize who you want to be. And your brain, which is just so fascinating, will fight you every step of the way. I coach a lot on like, this is why it's so hard, right? Let's try to stay like one step ahead of it from a mental standpoint, that it's like being on a diet. It's like cutting sugar out of your diet. All of a sudden, right. Yeah. You feel the drama of that internally. And I do give like kind of like my, this is what I think you should do from a nutritional standpoint. This is kind of the things that I think you should implement in your day to day. Like I love infrared light therapy. I love saunas. I love my vibration plate, right? I do cold plunges. So I'd like to kind of give them the tangible stuff at the beginning that will help, sort of, get out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, kind of like, open up the the ability to get to a more creative side with, so then I'll go into meditation a lot, which I think a lot of people think is a really difficult thing. And if you look at it as just sitting in a quiet room and ceasing all thought whatsoever, then yeah, it's incredibly difficult. It's almost not possible. But I've kind of devised all these little different ways that I believe are meditations. That's really just about quieting all of the voices inside your head so you can hear that one true voice. Once you learn how to get through the process, it's going to be a process you continue for the rest of your life.
I want to ask you kind of a futuristic question. You said that your daughter saved your life. And as a cosmetic surgeon who works a lot with older women, one big struggle I see is when they become empty nesters.
Yes.
And they feel like they've quote unquote lost their purpose. I mean, you said your daughter's 10. Have you thought about what that means for you as she gets older, becomes more independent?
Yes, but I took that on, like I cleaned house. I mean, I did mentally. I really had to look at a lot of things about me, codependent tendencies. I mean, like you name it. I went to battle with it. It was rough. But all very much needed, right? All lessons that needed to be learned. And I truly believe that I could not teach them to my daughter, that I could not expect her to live a happy life if I did not do these things for myself, because where else do you learn to be happy? Like, you don't take a class in school. There's nothing that you can't go to a program online. There's nothing on social media that's really going to show you how to be happy. It'll show you how to have fun. It'll show you what everyone else is doing and make you measure up to that and to think that you're happy, but it won't really show you how to be happy. And so you have to model that behavior. And of course, we talk a lot. I'm very, very honest with her, to an age appropriate level. She picks up things pretty quickly though. And she's the first one to call me out on any disparity. Hey mom, that's not what you said. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I am very honest with her, and, I'll say like, we love being together. I was like, you're getting older. You're going to be off with your friends more. And, it will be the saddest day for me when you leave to go off to college or wherever you're going, but it will also be such a great day because I will know that I have done my job and that, now it's time for you to go on and live your life and you not have to worry about me because I'm doing all of these other things that are great and fun and exciting and challenging for me. And so that when you're off living your life, I'm going to continue to live my own. So I do coach a lot of women about, how you have to set up your life for yourself and show your kids that sometimes that means making difficult decisions, right? I got a call to go on the Tamron Hall show last fall and they're like, guess what? We're recording on Halloween Day, right? And it's not where I live. And so, my daughter was ready for me to take her trick-or-treating into this party after. And I had to tell her, I'm not going to be here. I'm leaving to go do this for myself instead of take care of you. And it was a really hard decision to have with her. And I kind of talked her through it. And I was like, look, this is an opportunity. If I don't go, like, they're never going to call me again. This is never going to happen again. And she was like, yeah, I understand. It still hurts my feelings. And we worked through it to a point. But, I was like, you're going to be in a position one day, I said, where you possibly have a family, you possibly have a spouse. I said, hopefully if you listen to my advice, you'll have a career or you'll have something that's very important to you, some sort of project or cause. And something personal will come up and you will have to make the choice. And I'm not saying that it's always the right choice to make it about you, but sometimes it will be. And I want you to be brave enough to do that. Then after I did it, I was lucky enough that it aired the next Monday and she happened to be off school and we sat down, we watched it together. And after she saw it, she said, oh, mom, I get it. I know why you did it now. And so I let her see my failures. And then I let her see me get back up again and try again, especially when it's something really passionate for me. Because if you don't have that passion anywhere in your life, you're never going to be happy. And where do you learn to cultivate it unless you see your parents and the people around you doing it, right? So you have to have that thing. I don't care if it's gardening or finger painting or something just so bizarre or crazy, but you get up every day and you love it and you make time to do it, and you share that with the people in your life, right? That's really, really important for your kids to see.
Yeah, for sure. I actually was driving home. I picked up the kids. I was on our way home yesterday afternoon. There was a work thing that came up and I was like pretty stressed out about it. So I pulled the car over into a parking lot. I'm like texting XYZ.
Yeah.
Yeah, my 6-year-old's in the back, like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm pretty stressed about work right now. And
Yeah.
I was like, do you want to know the details? And usually he says no, but he was like, yeah, I want to hear. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this is going on. I got to do this. I got to coordinate this. Like, your dad's out of town. I got to get you guys dinner. It just, and I told him, I said, I feel very overwhelmed.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
I think he's more interested in, they're definitely little sponges.
Even
Even when they're little, when they're one, like you were
they're
saying, like,
watching all
yes.
the time. Yeah.
Well, so as we wrap up, if there is someone out there today listening who's just a little bit unsettled with themselves right now, what is one little nugget of advice that you would give them?
I would say 2 things. One is keep going. And this kind of dovetails with it too, is that, maybe something that I said today just didn't land, right? Like you're like, I feel where you're coming from. I don't understand it, right? But there are so many people out there that have these great nuggets, or they have, real research or something that's really helpful. Sooner or later, someone is going to say something and the light switch is going to go off for you. And you're like, oh, that part makes sense. I get it. And then the next little pebble will show up, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So really just keep going, love yourself through the process, but keep going because the answers are there. And I promise you, if you continue to look, you'll find them.
I love that. Well, Dannie, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope you have a wonderful, happy day.
Thank you. It was so good to be with you.
This episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and content at hippocratic-collective.com. Thanks for tuning into FemMD. And remember, the world belongs to the women who question it.